Hello everyone, welcome guys. Welcome to Work Lounge, to our .NET and Prague Software Craftsmanship Meetup. We started doing Prague.NET Meetups a couple of years ago at NCR, and after a short break, we're starting again here under a new company that I moved to at Conware. And the first session right now will be together with Prague Software Craftsmanship guys from Vistaprint. We started doing the meetup to sort of share a little bit of knowledge and passion from other guys in tech world, in .NET world, or in software engineering in general. The attendance is overwhelming and much higher than we expected, so bear with us with a little bit. I hope we can all have an enjoyable experience here. We're just starting out with the .NET Meetup, and we're very curious about the feedback from you. If you have some topics that you're interested in, or if you have some people from your companies that would like to present topics similar, or something that would be interesting for the .NET community or software engineering community, feel free to stick with us after the talk, and be free to either come to me or anybody else that organizes and give us any tips or feedback from you. It would be very appreciated. Today's agenda is very simple. We will have a talk by Lukas Holota about security in microservices, and after that, feel free to stick around for a little bit. We'll have pizza and a little bit of informal networking with beer and stuff. So hope to see you there. So yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello everyone, good evening. As you probably guess, you know the company that I work for Vistaprint, where I work for security-related projects. Right now we are, let's say, part of the transformation to a new microservices ecosystem, and we are trying to create the centralized authentication and authorization service. With that comes a bit of challenges. One thing is the transition period from monolithic architecture to microservices. That's one thing. Second thing is hopefully do it right on the first try, which is fairly difficult. And given that security has been sort of my hobby and interest within IT, I'll definitely jump for that project. I like it, and that's with the experience that I got, that's one of the reasons why I'm here today. I'm not presenting myself as a Mr. Know-it-all, so I'm not saying that everything that I will be presenting as solution is the only right solution. And if you read the description of the session carefully, you saw that the session said it will be, let's discuss what's the correct solution. So in many cases I will be presenting the problems, presenting the kinds of attacks that some, say, not so pleasant users of your website or your microservices might try to do. And let's try to discuss, let's try to suggest what we can actually do about it. Why I named the presentation Microservices in the Cloud. That is that cloud now gives us a lot of powerful tools that we didn't have previously. Previously, only big companies could afford the large data centers with advanced technologies like application firewalls or CDNs. Now, it's at everyone's grasp. It's cheap, fairly cheap, given the value that it gives us. So technically, there's no excuse why not to do it properly, why not to secure your services. The question then is, use it properly and use it in a way that it actually delivers the value that you want from it. So the part of the security that, let's say, that covers the basic microservices in our world is that what we store is we store customer data. Most of you will probably create some kind of user accounts in your website. You will store user data that might be considered PII or even intellectual property. That should never be exposed. Obviously, in Vistaprint we have lots of private information. We have photos of your kids because you've uploaded them to our website and we printed them on a Mac. That's a lot of data that we have to protect. And it's still a lot of data that you don't want to be shown. Second part is that, and that's currently probably the most frequent kind of attack, is that the attacker is not trying to steal the data in your service, it's just trying to prevent you from actually serving your customers. These are various kinds of DDoS attacks. I will describe a lot of these attacks in the presentation. The problem here is that not just the website is down for a couple of hours, you're unable to serve the customers, you are losing money, and you're also losing reputation. Your website doesn't look credible if it's down in the prime peak time. Third one is, it's often disregarded as something that has been solved a long time ago. These are platform issues. If you have a website that goes down for an hour, or you have one-off leak that somebody exploits an injection and steals a part of your table, that's one thing. If your platform gets compromised, in this case, it's your cloud account. The attacker has access to everything, and with the resources now being accessible by your cloud account, which is usually just protected by password, it can be easier attack surface with a lot higher value. So if the attacker gets into your cloud account, they can shut down everything, they can steal the data. Pretty much, it's just prepaid. As I said, the part when we started in Vistaprint splitting the monolithic solution that we currently have into microservices, this presented a lot of challenges. One of the basic challenges is that if you have one large product, like huge monolithic architecture, you usually have one security layer that usually guards the whole ecosystem. Not every time the layer works correctly and it covers the whole website, but usually when you are behind the secure layer, you are considering yourself that your component is covered, that you don't have to specifically secure every bit of the code. With microservices, this is a bit more fragmented and it could get a bit more expensive, and that is that you have to suddenly secure every small component that you will deploy. Every microservice has to be secured to the same level, to the same degree, independently. If you don't do it, if you leave one or two services that are not protected, they can serve as a backdoor to your system. It doesn't have to mean backdoor in terms of leaking data. It could be backdoor in terms of abusing the service for a DDoS attack. At that point, this problem can spread around your ecosystem and obviously cause a lot of damage. So as I said, the first part that I will cover is how to protect and what happens if you lose user data and how to treat it. Anyway, the first table here, this is just the highlights of the leaks from 2018. When you look at the table carefully, you'll see that apart from Facebook, which has been hit by the affair around Cambridge Analytics, which was not technically a leak, it was let's say incorrect exposure of incorrect exposure of data to a third-party component. Everybody else is not a tech company. Everybody else is just someone who is using technology as a supporting means to deliver business, to deliver a service. That means that this company can be hurt by this as well. And that means that even if we are not working for a huge tech-only company that's been creating bundles of software or software as a service product, we still have to treat the security the same. And it can still hurt us even more. The smaller the company can be, the more it can hit you. It's not usually only a couple of large companies can recover from from exposing the user data and getting it public in the media. All of these leaks have been public, especially last year it was fairly popular because they managed to leak not just user accounts but also a couple of credit card numbers, which doesn't happen too often. As you know, this data is very easy to sell for a very high price. This actually appeared just last week when I was preparing the presentation. Just saw the article. For those who don't speak Czech, is the user data were leaked from Spotify. Czech and Slovakian users were affected as well. I read in the article they even confirmed with one of the Czech users that the passwords were legit and they actually leaked. The worst part about this is that if another website leaks, you could be exposed as well. Just because a user is lazy and they use the same password to your website, you didn't do anything, yet you could be exposed. If the attacker comes with the same password to your website, technically he came with the right username and password, so you gave him the data, but you will still not look good in the media anyway. Nobody will care about that. So let's start with one of the things that we actually are handling as well by our expert discovering the login page for Vistaprint, and we recently saw a couple of attacks, a couple of problems that we need to, let's say, improve. So what could possibly happen? I mean, I know everybody probably saw some simple system that just authenticated users, probably some kind of internal system that just asked the user to enter the username and password. Let's assume that all of the applications that we will be considering are exposed to the public internet and larger number of customers. Let's not consider internal systems which are hidden behind internal network. So in this case, what should a good login page do apart from validating the username and password? Anyone? Nobody does.
Hash the password.
Okay, that's the basic. If somebody is storing today the password in plain text, that's a reason to cry.
For the banking,
You should start.
for the banking side, I would expect we don't need to touch the keyboard, and they would have a keyboard mimic, or what should I say, a icon with which you can enter the password without touching the keyboard.
That's one way that we see in internet bankings a lot, and we saw that like it started popping up like 10-15 years ago a lot. It depends how you consider, let's say, where the attack is coming from. If the attack is coming from the exposed workstation, in which case, let's assume there is a keylogger installed, I'm going to assume that attacker was not completely stupid. In that case, he might as well catch the clicks of the mouse. So that was, maybe it was useful for primitive keyloggers, that would work. But today, when we can interact with JavaScript in the browser and track the elements that are on the screen from a hidden application, that wouldn't probably help too much. I mean, it's added some kind of level of security, but it usually just adds the psychological safety for the user. To say, okay, this site is doing something extra for my safety because I don't see that everywhere. Is there something else that could be?
You can use like the source field for something which is from, for example, there's application you have on your mobile or your computer. So like this would be
like two-factor authentication.
Yeah, two-factor authentication.
Okay, that's definitely the best solution if possible. You'll probably see that most of the internet banking sites use that. They send you a notification that require you to write a code that your mobile application generates. Trouble is, if you're Facebook, it's fine. It's very easy because most of your users have your mobile app installed anyway. Well, what do you do if you're just a small business? We were actually considering this exactly the same solution as a part of the UI flow. Trouble was that, how likely it is that we will actually persuade our users to install the mobile app in large enough percentage that it would actually make sense to implement. This definitely, from the security standpoint of view, is one of the best options. Trouble is from the business point of view.
But SMS, it's usually you can use SMS.
Yes.
How about using anything provider like Google?
Yes, exactly.
Them to take care of it.
Exactly. Let them to take care of it because they are big enough to ask the user to install the mobile app, or to provide the recovery flows and the other things like logging your IPs.
What about I'm not robot check?
You mean like a captcha?
Yeah.
Okay, we tried that. The money hit was 30% down, or compared to the normal login page that had only captcha.
Because some robots train on your platform.
No, it was actually discouraging real users. We saw that the solution rate was 80% of the users were solving it correctly, completely fine. Trouble was that even some of the users who managed to pass the reCAPTCHA obviously got annoyed enough not to buy anything. It sort of spoils the point. So at least, what we did in the end was that we showed reCAPTCHA only to specific kinds of people. So now we have the solution rate approximately 50 to 40%. So we see that we really show it more to the bots than the real users, but it's just it's improving the existing solution. It's not a new approach in this case, but we tried that. So yeah, I would say the last bit is like detecting the malicious behavior. That is that you get the emails from Facebook or Google saying that there was a suspicious sign to your account. At that point, usually they allow you to log in anyway, or they require you two-factor, but they still notify if they are not 100% sure. They notify you just in case your account was compromised, so at least know, and you can minimize the impact. Which means that somebody would have your password, so that in case you can change the password on that side, and those other 20 sites will use the same password. That's the sad reality, but it's reality.
One thing you should probably avoid is not to inform a user with a failed login why it has failed.
That's a very tricky bit, and that's actually the next bit. Sometimes even finding out that the account exists with a given email on the website is enough for the attacker. 3 years ago, there was an attack on a dating site called Meetup, which was aimed at married people. So let's say if your wife found out that you had an account on this dating site, even just that fact could damage your, let's say, reputation. So if I'm just doing this kind of request to your site for login page or password recovery page, and I see something like this, I can pretty well spot which one of them actually is in the database, and it doesn't matter what you put on the website. It doesn't matter what kind of text you would say there. I know. So the question, yes?
Sorry, Lukas, I don't understand the graph.
The graph is the request latency. So if I do one request after another, how long does it actually take to process it?
Over time. Right?
Over time, yeah, this is milliseconds, so it's a bit smaller. So in that case, I know that this is called as a side channel attack. This is by the external indicators. I'm guessing how the internal implementation works. Given that a lot of the login page logic is very similar from one website to another, then the attacker already can guess to a degree how the login logic works. So in this case, they can also guess that if I found the account in the database, I did something extra, like verify the password, or in case of registration, like reset password flow, I actually send that email because I found the password, so I could send that email. So the only protection against this is just doing a fake work as a part of the request and just slowing down all requests to the same degree. The question is, what do you do with registration page? Let's say in our case, we have registration page where you enter your email and password, and we want to make the email unique across user accounts. That means that if somebody tries to register with an email address that you already have, we have to somehow notify them. What should we do in that case? Not to discourage the user in case it's a real user that just forgot that you already registered, forgot the password, doesn't understand the UI, and really discourage the attacker. What could be the options? Because this is a really tough one.
Just the async response and the background something.
Yeah, in this case, like if you're registering, you have to show the user something, right? So the user just enters the email, password twice, and thinks that he's creating a new account. If it's a real user, what do you show him that that you can't create an account? You don't want to create an account.
You can still allow it and then enforce the activation afterwards, which will go through the email. So he will see, we registered the request, but no activation will arrive.
Yeah. Yes. What if that account already exists? An attacker is trying that, so something in between. But
It's a different email, so it's
yeah,
a request.
that was the only solution that I came up with as well. Is you just behave like the registration was successful. You send an email, ask for activating immediately. But if that account already exists, instead of sending the activation email, just send a reset password email. But to the attacker, on the page, you always say registration was successful. In that case, I'm saying the account didn't exist. If there is a different flow that would work for this scenario, I would love to know. If you have an idea, please let me know. Another, as I said, there are databases of passwords that have leaked from other sites, and leaks from other sites can damage your website as well. And it has happened to us as well. In 2012, there was a huge leak from LinkedIn that leaked approximately 1.2 million passwords. A lot of them are still valid on many sites today, unfortunately. We have them as well. So what do you do? Because at that point, as I said, you didn't leak any data. It's not from your website, but if somebody, like in our case, some script kiddie, puts a YouTube video, creates a YouTube video and uploads it and says, you know, I hacked Vistaprint and I have just these 100 usernames and passwords, and puts the usernames and passwords into the video, which are technically valid, but we didn't leak them, we are the ones getting damaged. So how do you prevent that from happening?
So you can force the users with the leaked passwords to refresh them. So because you also know about this leak, so you will try those leaked passwords on your site, and for the same passwords you can notify your users to create new passwords.
Yes, there has been a website that's run by Troy Hunt that collects all of these data leaks and combines them all together, so you can look up your email and see if it has been breached. Trouble is that you don't see which password was leaked along with it. So this would definitely work. It just provides that you download the passwords from torrents and load them into your system, which is okay. Trouble is that it usually takes a couple of months until these passwords are available for free, because the attackers are not doing it just for open source community. They are doing it for money. So at first, the passwords are for sale. They are for sale usually in a way that they take a small portion of the database, they put it as a sample, free publicly. So that's the thing that starts running around the torrents and other download sites as the first thing. But the real deal, the full database, takes usually a couple of months. Because the sooner it gets public and the sooner everybody gets access to it for free, it loses the value. Because a lot of the users will start changing their passwords and it will start becoming worthless. So at that point, at the beginning, you have attackers who have those passwords, but they will try to exploit them. They might exploit them through your site. For example, in our site, users have credit cards saved in their account. They can't read those numbers, although they can buy stuff on their behalf. Which doesn't damage the customer in the end, because the customer just says, I didn't order anything, so we just refund them the full amount of the order, but we get damaged again because we made something that nobody actually wants and we shipped it halfway across the world. So it could become a quite expensive problem. So what could be the solution? How to protect the site so they cannot verify the database of the leaked passwords? This was actually the biggest problem that we were recently solving.
You can limit the number of requests per microservice.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say 5 requests per hour.
Okay. We actually went along the lines of that. What I want to show is there's a bit of relation between what you can protect yourself and what you can't. Let's say if we have the rate of the request per second that the attacker can do, and we have the IPs. So let's say it's a lot, and down there it's not that many. What can you do? There could be in different cases of let's say different kinds of attackers with different resources. If you have somebody who can run the botnet, then they have thousands of public IPs. In that case, they don't have to make that many requests per second to your site, and you stand no chance of differentiating that traffic from your normal traffic. So that's the trouble, but there's we say something along the lines of this, there's no way that you can protect this. As you said, that was really good because that's remitting the traffic per second from a specific IP. That's probably the only common denominator that you will find to the attacking request. Because if you use anything else, a cookie and anything that's in the request, obviously it can be forwarded, it can be cleared. There's no sense. Trouble comes with public IPs is proxy servers and nuts. Especially if somebody connected somebody from India, there are whole cities that are hidden behind one public IP. So it's a bit difficult to actually then find a sweet spot. What's the traffic that you actually want to allow, not to block somebody that's actually trying to buy something on your site and block the attacker. It's difficult to find out what was the actual malicious traffic. What I wanted to show is that there is a space that if you, this traffic that's very high RPS from any number of IP, if the requests per second are very high, usually they get blocked by DDoS filters that are automatically applied to your cloud service. Doesn't matter what cloud provider it is, if it's something bigger that invests into the protection like Azure, like AWS, like Google, this comes for free usually. But this protection only kicks in after you reach a certain threshold, and that threshold usually is very high to avoid false positive, because there is pretty much one level for every service that's hosted in the cloud. There are small services, there are big ones. It's also up to you to know what's the normal traffic and what's attacking traffic. So you can actually use some extra tools and set them up. We'll go through that when we get to the DDoS attacks. That's more specific to it. What I wanted to show here though is there is a specific part of attacks that you actually want to care about. And that's something in the middle. Because if somebody is sending just a couple of RPS from a small number of IPs, they will get 3 passwords a day. Okay, you stand no chance to differentiate that, but if they get this few number of passwords, it's okay. If they have resources, then again, you stand no chance. So, but you can protect yourself against this part. And why this part is important is because it has the highest likelihood of actually happening to your site. That is that the term that's usually used for them is script kiddies. They just take an application that they find online, they take a lead database that normally somebody tries against Microsoft, against Google, against somebody big. What these kiddies do is that they try it against somebody they know, against somebody local or a small business, which is something that you would say, the likelihood of happening to my site is fairly low. Thanks to these, who have access to only a handful of PCs or public IPs, they can try it. So if you don't have any kind of protection, they will succeed. And at that point, you will end up with a YouTube video. Which sucks. So how to protect it? The only way probably is some kind of protection like reCAPTCHA. There are a bit more advanced solutions which are more expensive that are provided, for example, by Akamai, who are providing you proxying the request to your site and along with the request they send you a header of how likely it is that this IP is abused by a bot. They give you their score of how much malicious traffic they saw from this IP and what's the likelihood. Trouble is that it's still up to you to decide what you do, and trouble is that you need to decide what's the threshold. And obviously even Akamai can be wrong if they have a lot of data, but still they can be wrong and you can block your customer. So the decision is still up to you. Okay, so now the more funny part, because this one is less about interactive website, it's more specific, let's say backend services, any kind of microservice that you have that can become an exposed endpoint for this kind of attacks. The first one, the simplest one, is just a simple brute force attack. Somebody takes let's say larger number of PCs. They just send dummy traffic to your way, and you have no way of determining which request is actually valid, which one is not valid. What has happened to me in past was that somebody actually abused a plugin that was aimed at WordPress, which turned every WordPress site that had that plugin installed into a remote curl. So that person didn't even need to rent a huge botnet for a lot of money. It was free, fairly cheap, available everywhere. So the only thing you could see was a huge amount of traffic that was distributed fairly evenly around the whole world, and you have no way of differentiating which is which. So at that point, how do you protect against that? How do you prepare? Because as I said, the cloud provider has DDoS protection usually embedded, but it kicks in after a specific number of requests. What do you do that, do you protect your application before that happens?
Scale.
What if your application takes 3 minutes to start? Then you need to refactor and change something, yes. Auto-scaling is usually the obvious answer to say, it's cheaper to just pay a larger bill for my cloud subscription than to lose my customers. Trouble is, by what you scale. Depending on the service, these metrics can differ. Probably the one that everybody will come up with is CPU. Service is getting overloaded, I'll just spin another one.
But that would have to be a service that does some computational heavy logic.
Exactly. How many do we have? 5?
So these are probably some backend services which you can close from, even in cloud, you can close them from public access, and you will not expose them to the outside world.
Exactly. I mean, you can protect them with message queues and some kind of asynchronous contract. Yes, that's the trouble that usually hits, that everybody thinks about scaling in terms of memory, in terms of CPU. Just in case I forget the bug, I forget the memory leak there, the service has to keep working. That's natural. What about these are different kinds of attacks? I'll get to the scaling in a second. Well, as we talked about scaling, there is just a naive way of executing brute force attack, and that is that you just start throwing the traffic at the website, and those will be probably the script keys. Let's imagine a smarter one who understands how a web server works and how a cloud account works, and knows that there is some scaling hidden behind, that there is a load balancer, and starts sniffing characteristics of your service. If I just don't try to just do full-scale attack from the beginning, but I gradually increase the number of requests, and I see this, what does it tell me? The graph again shows the latency of a request. It's milliseconds per request. How long it took to return the response from it. What does it tell me?
XR scales.
Exactly. And it tells me how quickly it scales. It tells me how sensitive it is to scaling. It gives me an idea how long it takes to spin off another instance. And it also gives me an idea by how many instances it scales. If it adds like 2 more instances every step of the way, or it just adds 1. So in that way, if I know that it takes 5 minutes to start a new instance, and that it's fairly, it scales against tell the ratio, approximate ratio of the request when it's going to start scaling, I can just wait for 2 hours. I can wait till midnight or whenever that region is going to be downscaled for cost reasons, and then I can just flood it completely. And I know what's the threshold. At the same time, I also will find out and that's the worst thing, where the scaling stops. So everybody says there should be some meaningful limit, upper limit, so we don't spend too much money on our cloud account. But if I know that, then I know what I need. That's the trouble. So technically, that scaling should be set a lot higher than you actually need to, and then what you actually anticipate. So even if you balance the service across multiple regions in AWS or in Azure, usually this scaling is done through DNS load balancing. So that attacker just gets pinpointed to one data center anyway, and is just going to attack that one data center. And if he's just going to take it down, he will move to the next one. The first one may recover, but it still causes problems. This is a very nice kind of attack that actually happened to us by our lovely DBA, who did it by mistake. But it was a nice little testing. What can you do if you have if somebody starts on purpose sending requests slowly? They initiate the request fairly quickly. They just deliver first couple of headers. They just deliver enough data, and then they just wait. They just keep sending once in a while a couple of bytes. Just send just enough to keep that connection alive until the request times out. According to which request that will actually time out in that case. Because we have two kinds of timeouts, one from the client, one from the server. The one from the client, the attacker can influence. That's what we often rely on, that the client is not willing to wait longer than 20 or 30 seconds. What is the usual value of the server request timeout? That how long you actually wait for the request to finish? What we found out is that in AWS the default limit on the load balancer is 60 seconds, which is a lot. A lot of the frameworks that you use for developing your application like Node.js and ASP.NET Core, they often have this protection already built in. That there is an exception that's thrown if the data is sent too slowly. The question is if you can protect yourself better against this than just rely on default values. If you, for example, know that your service only gets GET requests and they have no payload, you can set it more aggressively. If you know that your requests are usually set within a couple of milliseconds because the payload is very, very small and the processing is very quick, why wait 60 seconds? Another thing is the inputs. If you have a page where the user enters some kind of data, it's normal and natural that you validate the data. If it matches some kind of predefined format, that it has maximum length, minimum length. How many times do we do that with APIs? That we just receive a JSON payload that contains a string, and it has some maximum length. What where it usually hits the limit is that the framework has some kind of default value for the maximum request size. What I really loved about this was the old ages of WCF in .NET, when there was a property just specifically for this kind of protection, but it was set very low. So, it happened to me again as well. I was acting stupid. And, when the system throws an exception saying, the request is over the limit, what do you do? Now, a lot of the people in the company, including me, just Google what's the maximum number that I can put there so it doesn't appear again. It was an internal application, so okay. If you do that on the internet, it's not going to end well. The trouble here is that technically it's going to slow you down on many places because it clogs your network stack because the connection is open to actually receive the huge payload. So somebody just pasted a 5 megabyte string into a JSON payload, or I don't know, to fit below the limit is going to be 2 megabytes. It's still a lot if you're expecting 50 bytes. So you spend time receiving it, you spend time parsing it, validating it, and then only you probably find out that it doesn't make sense. But you already spent a lot of time processing that request that doesn't make sense. All these factors make DDoS a lot easier. Because the attacker is not going to be stupid enough to ping your health check endpoint that returns after 20 milliseconds. They are going to find out the slowest one that takes the most time and causes you the most damage, and they will exploit that one. So is there something else that you could do to actually protect yourself from this kind of attack? One thing that you can buy is web application firewall. It's a bit of an overhead to set up, quite a lot. But what you can do here is that you can define a template for each request that comes to your service, and if that request doesn't match the template, it will never even get to your service. So this behaves again as a DDoS protection proxy, but you can do a lot more. It's business specific to your application, so it can never happen that the endpoint that only accepts static, 4 JSON fields will suddenly get payloads of 2 megabytes or more just because it fits the maximum limit. In that case, you get more granular control over what's coming to your application, and you don't have to bother inside of the application that much. At the same time, you are paying for the application firewall, but at the same time, you are saving money on the scaling that you would have to do if somebody attacked your website this way. Because in that point, you would have to scale, if you do scale. Similar thing is special kind of payload.
What if I have different endpoints in my service that behave differently? Like one of them has longer timeout necessary, like your previous one, and one of them has a smaller.
Yeah, I mean if the endpoints are very different, then one of the reasons why microservices code on is that we can scale each component differently. And if the 2 parts of the same service have completely different scaling characteristics, it's probably better to separate them and turn them into 2 separate microservices. Because then you can protect each one of them. If you know that this request takes half a second to process, you will probably apply more protection to it because it's compute heavy. As you said, you can isolate it from the public internet through another contract. You can do the extra steps because you know that it's something sensitive. To add, special kind of payload is auth token. Used pretty much everywhere. All tokens are passed with pretty much every authenticated or authorized request today. The size of that token is right now approximately 1 kilobyte, could be a lot more. Depends on what you choose to be the content of the token and what the auth authority chooses. The trouble is that it's up to you to validate the token. And depending on what the authority provides, it can make it a lot more difficult. For those who don't know, GWT tokens are tokens that can be validated offline on the spot. The only thing that you need to download from auth authority is the public keys to compute the digital signature. Computing the digital signature depends on the signing algorithm that was used. Right now, the most used algorithm is SHA-256 combined with RSA, which is fairly quick. But the OAuth standard also supports, for example, elliptic curves-based algorithms, which are a lot slower on the verification side, when you are computing the digital signature, confirming that it matches. What the attacker could do is, they can just take a bit of JSON, make it a bit bigger. It doesn't make sense. You know that it will never match, but the bigger it is, the longer it will take to compute the digital signature. And just make sure that the header matches something that your auth authority has, that it's actually a matching key ID, that it's using an algorithm that supports it on the other side. And if that auth authority supports something slower, like the elliptic curves, the attacker will use it. And they will just send you random tokens that don't make sense, and you will just have to over and over compute the digital signature. And this can be fairly compute heavy, depending on the algorithm. So this has the benefit that the scaling by CPU works here very well, but that's about it. It can slow you down quite a lot. OAuth also supports another kind of token, which takes a bit longer to validate. These are called reference tokens. They are actually just a random sequence of numbers and letters that are just a handle to the real token. What your API in that case has to do is that you have to call your auth authority with this and say, please give me the real token for this reference token. What's the trouble here is that you are making an extra request to your auth authority. And in that case, the first request from the attacker is still waiting in your connection stack. So you're not just clogging the connection stack on the incoming side, but also making requests on the outgoing side, which makes it even worse. Plus, that request to the authority takes some time. It will probably return you error because it doesn't find that token if it generates the reference token securely. but the drawback is that it's easier to take the service down because of exhausting the connection stack. That's what we have seen a lot, that if you scale by CPU or memory, it's fine, but most of the microservices don't do compute-heavy things. What they do is call other microservices, call other components like cloud databases like Dynamo or Cosmos, that again, you just effectively transform and forward the request to somebody else, so you wait for someone. So there's a lot of waiting. It's a lot more probable that your service will die on waiting for someone with 3% CPU usage than having 99% and being completely overloaded. Can you think about something that would be like how to protect against this kind of attack?
Not to use them.
Yeah, actually that's one of the best ones, because the trouble starts here that a lot of the frameworks now have a library that's standardized and reusable for validating the old token, so you don't have to worry about it. Trouble is that to make your life easier, the developer supports both kinds of tokens. They support GWT, they support reference token. And in that case, if you leave it by default enabled, you don't even know about it, but you support it. So yeah, that's the way it's ideal to disable it. What if you need to use that?
Why do I need that?
For example, not everybody has space in cookie for 1.5 kilobytes of data in token.
You can differentiate by name and check just one algorithm for every certain name. So we will call it just once. Like you will have all JVT token and all out tokens separately. Name and by name you will know how to encrypt it or decrypt it.
Tell me, by the algorithm, yeah, I mean, you always validate the algorithm. For the GWT, you always validate that the algorithm that's written into the token is on the side of the authority, that it knows this algorithm and that it knows this key ID. And actually, this key can be used in combination with that algorithm. But the reference tokens, which are just a random string that you get and say, you have to exchange it to, you have to go to the old authority and just exchange it for a token. How would you protect against that? Because then all you get is a sequence of random letters and numbers, some length, and then all you have to do for validation is just forward it to somebody who knows how to interpret that information.
Is there some checksum or something like that?
That would be one way.
Maybe what you can do is a prioritized token you have already seen for logged-in users. And okay, maybe new people will have difficulties logging in, but at least people who are already in will continue nice.
Interesting. Something else?
So can you ask your authority to like a specific type of reference token?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if you're integrating with Google and using just Google to protect your whole ecosystem, it's not possible because you can't influence Google. But if you have your own authority, you are the ones responsible for actually defining what's the shape and form of the reference tokens. You are the ones defining the length. You are the ones defining the character set that's actually inside. You can do pretty much whatever you want as long as that value is cryptographically random, which means that it's secure and has enough entropy, then it's fine. So one way would be to introduce a checksum. Another way would be to introduce, for example, a specific length, something. It ends with a specific, some kind of convention that it's not disclosed. Obviously, if you have any employee that goes outside and blobs it out on the internet, then the protection is gone. But at least it can protect the basic kinds of attacks when somebody just starts throwing random values at you, and in that case you immediately reject that request, and you don't have to make that extra request. Okay. Any questions? Anything to add to that part, to DDoS kind of attacks?
Just to respond, it sounds like it's like dual. They will probably figure out that it must be specific length. They maybe can figure out that there is some checksum,
Yes.
It sounds like you're not like social. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's right. I mean, the attacker on the other side thinks as well. They are trying to get past the protection that anything that you develop. The question is, who is going to attack you? As I said, it's quite a lot likely and more likely that it will be some kind of script kiddie than a super mathematical genius hacker from Russia. So at that point, if it's script kiddie and first 5,000 of requests do not make it through and he just sees 400 or 401, you'll probably give up and start somewhere else.
Okay, so the point is technically not to prevent it, but make it difficult enough.
I mean, that's how encryption works. I mean, encryption is not unbreakable. It's just saying that it will take a bit longer to crack the values. That it doesn't make sense to spend the resources on cracking that one password or cracking that one encrypted value because it would take an extreme number of resources. Technically, anything that can be broken in the end is just about outweighing the benefits that the attacker can get from it. There's nothing else. Then the last section is there's a lot of basics. As I said, why I'm putting it here is because it has the most risk. Well, what you could lose in the end is the biggest thing. The attacker could technically just go to the portal with a nice interface, just hit the stop button and just shut it down. Doesn't take a genius to do that. Well, what the trouble is that sometimes you need some kind of door to that cloud account. You can't just completely shut it down and say, the application will just develop itself and deploy itself. You need somehow to get the application into the cloud. You usually need somebody to do the operations. You need somebody to support the application. As a part of that, they need to log into that account. They need to rescale the traffic. They need to occasionally do some ad hoc tasks. So, how to secure it?
First, possibilities to, like, a lot of things could be done that the cloud is asking some server for instructions, and not you are logging there and change something. What do you think about it?
It would work. It would definitely work. To avoid how the clouds are now defined. Because most clouds have management APIs, which are usually just REST APIs, which are read by PowerShell, command line tools, and everything else that you use for so it's easier to use and more pleasant. But the same way you are usually the active part. Because the cloud usually doesn't know when to deploy a new app.
IP restrictions? IP restriction?
Yeah, that could be.
VPN? VPN?
VPN, yeah, that could be. Although it can be a bit expensive. To set up the VPN between you and the cloud, depends how many accounts you have. For example, we are using one cloud account or by a small group of services. So our number of accounts is in hundreds. For isolation. Say if you have access to that account and you have half of the company there, and you have to give one of the developers administrative permissions, then it's a lot more risk that he will not just break his service, but he will break some other service. They won't like that either. So that's the thing. How do you protect something that you have to give away administrative permissions to someone else anyway? Because you have to. Because with microservices, we are developing something that's small because we have automation, because we can do the repeatable tasks automatically. The computer can do them for us. So we have to give the computer the permissions. Another thing is that you as the developer have the admin permissions to that account and you have to log in somehow. And I always love the integration and single sign-on, but does it always seem okay to use the same password or the same account for your email and your cloud service? Does it seem like the same risk group?
Some client certificates?
Mm-hmm. Could be like a different kinds of authentication, special kind of authentication to the cloud. Definitely would work.
What about mobile phone app, which you can add some sequence?
Two-factor authentication. Definitely. Definitely, that's the most basic one. Every cloud provider supports that. Azure Active Directory has it built in. AWS IAM has it built in. All the providers that integrated it, they can support it as well. Definitely use it. Ideally, I would say, for the risk perspective, maybe use a different account. It can still live in the same domain. It can still live in the same Active Directory, but they should have a separate lifetime. I mean, if you get a notification from your email because you haven't logged in a while, and you just click it because it's probably your phone trying to fetch emails, and you just click it. I will differentiate that from an attack, somebody actually guessing your password, trying to log in from somewhere else, and you just allow that. If it's a different account, and you know that you treat this as something that's more sensitive, more secure, and you see notification coming from that account, that's the psychological part that you will automatically see, okay, something weird is going on. Somebody gets into your email, bad stuff happens, there's a lot of information, but if somebody shuts down your service, it's a lot worse. Let alone copies the database. The same thing comes for the deployment for the build server. That's a bit more tricky because you want technically the build server to be able to deploy anytime. You want them to have the admin permission so they can actually make the new deployment, make the changes in configuration. The only thing that we came up with so far is using temporary credentials. That is a part of, let's say, if you have approval step in your deployment workflow and say, yes, I want to deploy to this environment, you also, based on your own personal credentials, generate temporary credentials, which are valid, for example, for a couple of minutes, only until the deployment is finished, and then they are just invalidated. This doesn't minimize the risk completely. I mean, it doesn't erase it. There's still a risk that if somebody gets to the build server, they can get the credentials. Trouble is, or the idea is limiting the impact. Because what can happen is that if you have a lot of automation, a lot of scales, it can happen that you output, you capture the output of a command and save it into a file that's left somewhere. You just print it into the output of Jenkins. It's just saved there because it doesn't detect it correctly as credential, and it's there. The benefit is that if you're using temporary credentials, it doesn't matter because by the time somebody reads it, it's invalid anyway. That was the idea that we want to use. That we came up with. If there's different one, we would like to know.
So who provides the token?
In that case, that would be the developer, somebody who is interactively saying, for example, I approve the deployment, please use my credentials, I generated them now, they are valid for half an hour. And
So the developer actually has
yes,
permissions to do anything.
Or has a break glass procedure that would to generate those credentials temporarily. Some kind of like escalation scenario, how to do it. That's actually one of the things that we started solving a while ago. It was escalation in general. If you have basically having your dev environment, the production environment in the same account, best idea ever. Just run a PowerShell command and everything can be done. That's the thing that's why I said we use a separate account for each group of services. We use them also for environments. Use them for different accounts for different environments to limit the access that I can't even damage anything, and I don't want to have permissions to the production account unless I have to.
I can have separate deployment server in the cloud itself, which will verify, for example, signature of the incoming binaries and then start deployment.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's definitely possible.
Of course, it is a little bit of headache, a lot of headache.
Yeah, but I mean, it could be worth it. It depends what you're storing, how sensitive that application is. Maybe it is worth it.
What about node promotion? Like deploy it in a staging area and then somebody goes to the cloud and promote it to production. One, it's approved. It's all the promote.
I mean, yes. I mean, it depends how you do it and who executes the changes. Because in our case, we are using quite popular thing, Terraform, and because of how brilliant AWS is designed, the deployment creates approximately 40 different kinds of resources. So I don't want to do that by hand. I want somebody else to do it. So who is going to do the execution and who's going to take on the role to actually run the stuff? Then it would work, but probably with the same solution as you suggested, that you would have some kind of executor that would be already in the cloud, already running in the same account or in the same scope, and it would be already the inside man that would have always the permission to do it.
Or maybe I can run the same service, like the same service under different accounts, and I can have procedure which will allow only one copy of the same service. For example, I have 100 instances, but I can work on 10 of them in parallel only. So the worst case I can do by one stupid click, because it does not have to be attack, it can be one stupid click.
Exactly.
Is
That's
I
the good
will
point.
get down then 10 services, and the remaining 90 will should still handle the load.
Would definitely work if the cloud provider supported that part. Because usually how it works that you create a deployment and you say please do a rolling deployment, so it starts rolling the servers, as you said, by partitions. But if somebody in that case has to come and say stop now, or usually some kind of automated health check that will detect that the service is not working, and at that point they will just stop the deployment. Like I said, most of the risk here is really protect the account, because suddenly something that's considered just any username and password, that if it's the same as your email, that's really making it worse, has access to the most precious thing that your company technically has. Because now the cloud account contains the service and it contains the data. As I said, they can do the most damage. They can shut it down and export the data in the process, so you lose both at the same time.
So you actually use separate accounts per service and per dev stage production?
Yeah, almost. At least our squad is using one account for all devs, because in that case we don't care about which dev it is, and then for production of each service we use a different account. It's becoming a hassle, yes. It's annoying, especially when it comes to time to rotate the tokens and so on. You are doing that 5 times. Yes, it is. But depending on the use case, again, it may be worth it. As I said, we are storing the password hashes of our users. So in that case, we are taking that it's worth it. Another thing is that happened to me a couple of times in Azure. That was that when something happens on the production server, something that you can't really replicate on your development machine, so you just want to look at that and see what actually happened there. Is it using the same version of binaries? Is it like the same file, configuration file there? It looks like there's something else. It looks like the deployment didn't work. So just open a tunnel to the VM. Just open an SSH, you open an RTP. Okay, what should you do afterwards? After you are done with the debugging.
You should stop that instance and let a new one be created.
Yes, that's the bare minimum that you have to do. That is, one thing is disabling that access. That's one thing. Disabling it on the cloud level. But another thing is don't forget to reimage the instance always. It's for multiple reasons. One reason is update of that instance, like updating the setting, might not happen at the same time that you think. So the cloud providers can wait a couple minutes before that actually happens. The other thing is, it opens the door to attacker, and the attackers are fairly quick at scanning. When we deployed the service and we saw how quickly we found out in the logs that there were people scanning for vulnerabilities, that we got people scanning if service/me PHP, myadmin, MySQL admin, who knows whatever else was there. It took 3 minutes. So people are fairly quick in scanning open ports, especially if it's something known as SSH. And it's on a public IP. So this yeah. That's the trouble, because at that point you are opening door which is a lot easier to break than your cloud account. Because if I know, for example, that you have the VM hosted in Azure, which is not that difficult to distinguish, or if it's in AWS by the domains, by the DNS chain, then I probably know how long that password is. I probably know what's the internet of that password. Just give me data. If you kill that port within 5-10 minutes, probably I don't make it, but if you forget it, I have a lot of time, I have pretty much unlimited number of retries. That's the bad thing, because it's opening way to the system that's less protected than it normally would be. The worst thing is that if that instance is in production, in memory of that instance or on the disk of that instance are your production credentials to your cloud subscription. For example, if you're in AWS, the environment variables contain a lot of information about the role that the machine actually has against your cloud account. So if I get to that machine and I upload my binary, just uses those variables and assumes the role of the machine that it has, I can access all the cloud resources that your application has access to, which would probably mean its own database. Again, I have just effectively a remote terminal to access the database, just export it and sell it. Another thing is that a lot of the resources, as you said, resources can be hidden in private subnets, and especially in AWS, it's a recommended practice. But there are other resources which are always public no matter what you do. But usually these parts are software as a service components, like databases, Dynamo, Cosmos. They are always public. The endpoints are public. The only thing that's standing between the attacker and the database, or the data inside, is the token. So as a part of AWS, you generate a token every time you try to access it, or every couple of seconds, but you are doing that against using the same credentials. On the other hand, as Cosmos used to do it, is that there was one random token that you just got generated, technically got two, but you used one of them, and you always repeatedly send the same token to get access to the database. And what was bad about it, it was up to you to rotate it. It was up to you to automate the process of falling back to the other one and rotating the first one. Obviously, given that it's a hassle and you have to do it, not that many people did it. And again, it's a resource that's technically public. At the same time, if you don't change it, it's then a lot more likely that it will leak somewhere because somebody puts it in a Slack channel. It just happens.
So why is best practice so these resources are public? Is there a reason?
I mean, the resources are fairly well protected in terms of number of retries, number of guessing the wrong password. The worst thing is protecting really the credentials that give you access to those resources. So if you have, for example, the token for the Cosmos DB, protect it as much as you can and rotate it often. This thing can be usually automated very easily through AWS automation or Azure automation. Trouble is that the providers don't always provide it for you. So sometimes you have to write it yourself and plumb it with your configuration of the application. That's the annoying bit. But technically, if you wanted to if you automated it, even in Azure with a sort of static token, you could renew the token every hour. A lot more difficult to guess. If you, by mistake, put it somewhere in a Slack channel, you are then limiting the impact because it's in an hour, it's invalid. If the attacker finds it after a month, it's a useless piece of data. But this is the idea of minimizing the attack surface.
But if you set up a firewall unlimited only to VNet, and your resources communicating to
Those resources don't live in your virtual network.
I think in Azure you can have it like Azure Cloud DB, you can have it accessible via VNet.
Now maybe I can, but at least by the time I was using it like last year ago, a year ago, then it wasn't. It wasn't available.
That was actually my question, why these resources and Cosmos endpoint is public?
Because the idea is that the cloud is like a Lego, right? You can just buy the stuff that you need and build a service out of it. And they can be sure which Lego pieces you will need to access from whichever place. A lot of the companies are utilizing hybrid clouds because they are still moving their own data center to the cloud, or they don't want to move everything. So in that case, you have, for example, a storage account in Azure, blob storage that is just there to store files. And in that case, you might want to use it and synchronize it with some bus share in your network. At that point, you need means to access that resource from your network, from outside of Azure. you could cover it with VPN, but primarily the simplest use case is that you don't, and that's why the endpoints are exposed.
You can put IP filter.
Yes, if you have the chance.
You said Dynamo is always.
Sorry?
Why is it not a non-default setting?
Like that it's always public, and the credentials are deemed secure enough. I mean, the credentials have enough entropy, they are long enough, so, and the endpoints are protected, so it's difficult, you can't just keep doing this kind of attack and just sending thousands of requests to guest until you have the right token. Usually the trouble is that you start leaking it, and because you don't rotate it, it's very old, and somebody finds that piece of data somewhere after half a year and it's still valid. That's the danger.
So it's if you can't trust the AWS authentication, which is used for the access in DB, then you wouldn't even trust, this authentication to access your administration in AWS, right? So that's what they basically say, that a lot of their services are actually public because you use your AWS credentials to access them, but you use those same credentials to access even the AWS management console, so you could do anything here. So, that's how it was explained.
Basically, the first thing is to start thinking along the lines of limiting the access on the network level. You can do that, obviously, for some resources. For some, it's designed that you can't. Like I said, I mean, guessing the password is pretty much impossible. The real danger is forgetting the password somewhere and not rotating it. That's a lot more frequent. Best case also is that's to encrypt the data. If somebody gets a token to your database and the data there is encrypted, they can download it, serve the night. It's useless. If you miss the token, if you miss the credentials that are for one resource, in AWS that's a bit more difficult because it uses centralized credentials. But if you have, for example, as it was in Azure, that you have credentials per services and you usually shuffle multiple tokens, then that means that there's less probability that you will leak both of them. And if you have the data encrypted, you can, in that case, pretty much upload the database to torrents and it's safe, you don't care. Another benefit is that in that case, you don't have to give access to everyone. If for development purposes, you might need to give developers access to the database. You don't have to give them access to the encryption keys though. You can store the encryption keys in a completely different account, different scope. That's only for privileged users who have access to this. And in that case, the developer can check the database, check, for example, the size of the value, what's the structure of the value, if it makes sense. But if it's encrypted, they can't take and steal the company data. They can't steal the user's data. Which has the benefit that if you have an angry employee, he can't take the data with you and with him and just expose it somewhere on the internet to damage you. As well, I'm also sort of mentioning to split the responsibilities. It gives you less likelihood of exposing both of them at the same time. Okay. So that's what I have. If you have something else, I'm curious.
I hope so. Five minutes. So at least some questions.
So if you use a BAF, like web application firewall, you based on the third-party provider?
Yeah. What we are using is Akamai that we use for knowledge protection. The officer comes almost for free. The book protection that I mentioned from Akamai, that's a separate product. It's very steep, very expensive. But the web application firewall is pretty much the same component on their side. But they are doing the use protection and still validating the request, but they also apply some additional validation along the way. So So for them, it's not that much overhead to apply. It's more of a hassle to actually configure it correctly and somehow to manage it because it's another product. So if you just deploy a new version of the service, it has different selection of the request, then you again have to reconfigure also the firewall so it fits the new structure of the request. So it's a bit of a challenge to automate these things so they are in sync. So you have no compatibility with two different versions that may be running live at one moment and then switch finally to the new structure.
So you don't store any keys on the build servers. You always provide the tokens
I mean,
by default.
we separate the services by sensitivity. Some of them are not less so, and so for some of them, you just have the keys for the account. The first thing that comes to mind is really fortifying the build server. That's why we keep the build server out of the cloud, it's in our internal network. But again, technically, an employee who is very angry and works at like infrastructure-based team, they can access the server and they can technically expose it. Best case is use some kind of security management that you can remove the script from the server ad hoc and just the server having the identity. But again, if the build server is running under a service account, somebody who is enterprise administrator on Active Directory, they will eventually have the permission. So it's about really limiting the scope, but you will never limit it completely. You will never eliminate the risk.
Yeah, another
Use
question.
certificate based on location, store the client certificate in the service, mark it as not exportable, and then
Yeah, well, if you can log yourself into the build server, you can use it as a exploit.
okay, then you will get one token, which is one for one day. That's fine.
Yep.
But you will never get the secret which is used to generate tokens.
Yeah. My point here with the build server was that sometimes we just set up the infrastructure and just the service is completely fortified, bulletproof, and then you find the backup lines and where underneath it, or the build server is not very well secure, and so it suddenly starts behaving as a backdoor to the system. So about it's a tool that helps you, but let's not forget that it could be also used by someone else. And that comes especially with the cloud-based build servers.
And one more question. So you mentioned you have a lot of AWS accounts. So you also mentioned, I'm not sure if you use like some kind of single sign-on there. So do you, or
We do for some of them.
Okay.
For the let's say less sensitive ones, for that we use single sign-on is based on Active Directory, but uses two-factor authentication as a mobile format. For the ones which we treat completely sensitive, we disable the single sign-on and we use different set of accounts for each of those AWS accounts.
Okay, and so then you have some manual process for employee onboarding.
Yes, how we work is that we have a large autonomy within the team. So it's up to the team to decide the strategy. We have obviously some guidelines on the company level for imposing minimum security, especially if we are working on something as sensitive as using passwords. But yeah, it's up to us how we solve it. From what we've seen in the attacks was that the AD passwords are not deemed secure enough. Even though the SES has a policy that we change them every 3 months and so on, but it still doesn't give us enough confidence. Factor authentication gives us enough confidence to use them for the less sensitive applications, but for the more sensitive, we use a different set of accounts. But yes, it's very annoying because then as an employee you have your domain password, which is a key to almost everywhere, and then for each account we have a completely different username and password.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe people really use different password.
Good question, I don't know. Honestly, but yeah, I do. But yeah, there's no way to impose it. Say the voice doesn't allow it.
And then do you save all of them into LastPass?
No, in this case, no. But normally, most of them, yes.
So how do you treat secret data like credit card numbers? Do you have any special precautions for that?
Yeah, for credit card numbers, this is a bit different because in the United States there is a special standard for that. it's PCI compliance, and we have to pass an audit every, I think, year, that they actually go through the infrastructure, how it's stored, and who has access to it. They more focus on the process side and more about how we treat the data, who has access to it, that we don't leak it somewhere along the way. Not so much about the encryption, but yeah, we use the same amount of encryption as for the user passwords, that we encrypt each record with a randomized secret, all that with our master keys, which are updated frequently.
Okay, and if you're not so hungry, they just go there 20 minutes late.
How is it?
20 minutes.
So we just started baking those pizzas.
Yes. There is still some baguettes you can have, some ginger, whatever is here. 20 minutes pizza is going to be here. There's nothing on that. Sorry for that.
How about the logging from your microservices? Do you like some centralized system? Is it public?
Yeah. That's what we are developing, is like pretty much the replacement for the login page, that we are creating something as accounts that Google are login with Microsoft, decentralized authority, so all the microservices are just sending each other JWT tokens that are signed by our certificate.
And the system where you explore the logs, is it like publicly accessible?
Sorry?
The place where you access the logs, something like Rana?
No, the services are publicly available, pretty much available. There are exceptions that are now hosted behind the VPN, but there's more for legacy compatibility purposes rather than security purposes. They need access to the old legacy system, so they use a VPN, but all the services are publicly available. This is why I was mostly talking about the video service, because that's the danger that comes if you expose all the services in the public. Like I said, it took 3 minutes to somebody to find out the domain that you just created. And already scanned it. So if they wanted to just book it and just try a couple 100,000 requests per second to it, I mean, they could have.
That's why I asked, because if there is for your clients, now you can easily just go to your logs, some of your systems, some of your developers are like sending those special repositories very like very detailed.
I mean, like logs, no. We saw logs where we store either in the cloud account itself, using the building providers, or we use a third-party provider, use Synology for some of the services. I think that's the most used thing. So technically, the logs travel along like over the wire, but they are everything is always ETS. So they are encrypted, and again, the logs are they are using a single sign-on with two-factor authentication to actually do that. But true is that yes, logs along with the backups and all these sort of side artifacts are a very good source of information if somebody forgets.
So I think before it was clear that the question is about logs. You mentioned how the services authenticate between each other. So I didn't catch it. So can you just
we usually split the services into two parts. One is user specific, and second thing is like page jobs. When you use specific stuff, they only work if you give them a user-specific token. So when you load the user in through your website, mobile, whatever, you get a user-specific token which gives you the permission to do anything on the user's behalf, something that the user can do themselves. So these user-specific services, or sort of edge services for the ecosystem, they only accept a user-specific token. So if you try to perform an operation on someone's account, you can't. You only have the permission that user has. If you have, for example, services that have different business logic, like I need data for all the users that signed today, then we have S2S authentication. So it's still the same token, it's still validated the same way, except it doesn't have any user ID. It just proves the identity of the service, who's calling it. The benefit is that given how it all works, you understand how we configure the scopes, how we define the connection to the API. You can very easily use one library that's set up to actually allow both kinds of calls on the same controller, or at least in the same service. And the benefit of that is that it's standardized, so there are libraries out there, because we have a fairly heterogeneous environment. We have services in like 5-6 different platforms, languages. But I said, yeah, so we can pick up the platform that you want to use to write the service. So at that point, the benefit is that it's standardized, because then every language has a library that you can use out of the box. Almost. And it's usually, and the benefit is that it's usually fairly secure, because a lot of people use the library.
For tokens, you use something like JWT.
Yeah.
Do you have any way of invalidating them in case?
Yeah, I mean, the validation is part of the standard. I mean, JWT has a standardized way how to validate it.
No, I mean if you want to remove.
JWT can be revoked. They are valid as long as they don't expire. That's the drawback of JWT, so that's why you should issue them for short-term periods of time. I mean, that's either or. That's the benefit of reference token. As Paul asked, why to use reference token? That's the benefit. Because technically it's just a random ID of something that's in your database. If you just delete it, it becomes invalid and nobody can use it. So that's the benefit. Just, it's about thinking about a scenario. If you have an internal application and you need to find someone and remove their access immediately, it's probably a better use case. If you have users who always can create an account but pretty much can never delete it, or they can for GDPR purposes but none of them do it, then it's not so useful to have a token that you can actually remove. Obviously, if the token leaks somewhere, then idea, in our case, it would be probably a token on behalf of a user. So the scope of the token is limited. So the damage that the attacker can do with the token is to mess up one user account, which we can, worst case scenario, manually recover to original state. Some damage done, but it's limited.
There is some middleware which can validate simply if the data which are incoming are at least slightly possible, like post must be always JSON, for example.
That's up to the framework that you are using. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I mean, in the that is there some? I would imagine that there will be some middleware which, because it's like before your application technically starts, it's just quick check, and ends it very soon.
Yeah, I mean, there are checks. There's a lot of checks that are done before it actually passes, but a lot of them are relying on the default values. You have a max size of the request, the maximum waiting time for this. This usually we don't think about it too often, and you don't usually change the values. It works fine. But you can implement one of it on your own. As I said, the benefit is that if you have actions that behave completely differently, you start separating them into separate, really, or almost nano-services. And the benefit is that if you have a group of actions that behave the same, you can impose strict restrictions on the whole application level, which is a lot easier than writing your own custom logic to sniff out if this request do this, if this request do this. You just say, the timeout is 5 seconds, goodbye. Or the maximum payload is 5 bytes because I don't experiment anything with apart from my head.
Maybe the idea is to say that usually my post is smaller than this, and with these exceptions, like one upload the file, one.
This is more of a case for the application firewall, because this is really aimed at it, and especially upload. That's one of the bit dangerous bits, because then suddenly, if you have an upload action in the service, then suddenly you have to bump all the limits to the maximum size of the upload that you support. Today, 5 megabytes upload is not that much actually for the users if they are uploading an image. But if you are expecting a JSON, it's quite a lot because you know that it doesn't make sense. So I said, if you don't want to separate them out, and if you want to keep them in the same service, it's better to use the web application firewall, because then you can easily define the rules per action, per API call.
Now I'm just thinking that our application will be easier to kill. We have little access to it, so it's not open. Like to create the most nested JSON. You could probably kill just the JSON.
I mean, for each is another beautiful thing that you do. But if you have a JSON and you do something for each of the items inside, especially call a service, I mean, it can pass a validation of each less than 1 megabyte, but it can still be 1,000 items if the values are short enough. And suddenly, if you start doing it for each, then you will just kill yourself.
Yeah, I guess some Stack Overflow or something like that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be in Stack Overflow. It doesn't have to be nested. But just that you are doing one call by another, it just takes time. And you're just spending the time on the server, allocating the thread, and just waiting for something. And if I send a couple of these signals, then suddenly it becomes a lot easier to kill the server. Because again, I don't have to exhaust the CPU, it's a lot easier to exhaust the number of connections. That's the biggest drawback. And that's the limit also on the VMs that are in the cloud. Usually you have some kind of categories like low CPU performance, moderate CPU performance, but you also get the same for network performance. And the cloud providers aren't stupid, they know that this VM can't simply handle larger traffic than X. So they just limit your network on the machine so you can't go higher because it doesn't make sense. So on small VMs, it's easier to exhaust that stack. On the other hand, if you have a lot of small instances, the network stack is higher than if you have 3 huge instances. Because the stack usually works on OS level and there is some minimum value of connections that it can keep up. It's better to granularly scale than to have a couple of big instances. Another beautiful way how to kill your service, and that actually happened to one of the interns when I worked. He was writing the 404 modules, which was handling, guessing by the URL that was there, a page that was deleted a year ago, was guessing where the user wanted to go and was just suggesting the content for the 404 page. And at that point, he just did a bit of a nested loops problem. So a site that had normally 500 to 700 RPS or 5,000 RPS within 10 minutes of the deployment. So that killed the whole data center within a couple of minutes. Just a stupid bug because it just said, yeah, the service, I just need to fetch the whole HTML, not just this part. I need the full rendered HTML, so I need to call the CMS from the outside. So he created a loop, and that loop went on and on for some time.
Loop back from hell.
But these are bugs.
When you go back to the slide with this 350 millisecond spike,
yeah, that's
you are talking about like make it the same. Now, why is it a bad idea to just wait those 300 milliseconds more?
Because you cannot predict how long the compute will actually take. So if, for example, you are sending an email, that call to that other service takes, it doesn't always take the same time, but the ballpark will be probably similar. But with the wait, it's difficult to guess what that value is, because that value depends on a number of things, like the state of your internal network within the cloud, or the state of the email service. So if I call that email service 10 times, the response time will be similar. Over longer time, it may diverge, it may get longer. But in the case, if I just do a thread sleep, how long should I wait? I don't know. At the same time, I'm looking at that, I'm unnecessary.
It's good. You can do it, task delay. Ideally, I think in the middleware, you can check how long it takes. You will have some standard length. You will calculate the delay until it will be the same. And the net coverage should be quite straightforward.
Okay. If I just get rid of this. If you have longer time, let's say that calling the email service over a couple of days is something like this. And you want to wait. So do you put into the wait this value or this value?
Max value, sure.
But then you're again holding your connection stack, like you're keeping the connection open longer than it would actually need. You're making it more difficult. What we actually do have protection against this. What we do is that we do the same operation that we would do with Validate, we just do it like with fake. So if we do encryption, we just encrypt random real bytes. If we do hashing, we hash random bytes.
It's necessary to have some kind of culture when you're changing this code.
Yes.
I'm used to to expect that guys in my team can make a mistake.
I mean, always mistakes happen. It's just about minimizing like what you see. The idea is that this is usually not part of the test that you automatically run. It's not always the thing that you think about when you just deploy the service. It's new and shiny. It accepts only the signed tokens, and you say that it's secure. Yes, there is a lot more that's what the attackers can do. It's about thinking what all they can do and what you can do to prevent it.
I guess you can distinguish whether it's becoming like when you have you said you have to build the responses and then it's that you use the responses just how when you the services authenticate themselves.
It's part of also that is it's upon different forms, and one of those forms is just like sketching it just so the client has some kind of client ID, which is like a username, and it has client secret, like a password. Where the benefits come is that the flow by definition supports that you can have multiple active secrets, so you can easily do regulation of the skills, so it's easier to manage. But yes, in this case it's effectively just username and password for the service. On the other hand, in that case for service level it should be fairly easy to do. The service should be ordered by someone that's simple. I mean, if you're for example authenticating into the captcha external service that you will get some kind of secret from them as well. So you still need to know how to protect the secret. The biggest drawback in this is that, again, as with the tokens to the cosmos, other databases, you have to take the secret. And it's something that's super easy not to do, because if the secret usually doesn't expire, so there's nothing that's forcing you to do it. And then if it never expires, after 3 years it still works, but you don't know what it could be exposed to.
Now, with this form, when you receive secrets, you have something that generates them and there's some access to go from the services.
How it goes, for example, if you walk into the console and you say, I want to consume the APIs and they generate your secret, what they do is you click a button to say generate the secret, they send that secret just to you, and they say just a hash of it, just like you would do in the past. This time it's a bit different because you should use a fast hash. Because you can give the client switching to tokens, let's say, in such optimal way that you have clients that, and we are doing this internally, we are creating tokens and libraries for others, so they just fetch the tokens, let's say once in half an hour, if it's valid for an hour, or somehow automatically after the payment time. But if there's a better implementation and they try to fetch the token with every request, which happens a lot, then you have to be prepared, and you cannot just, using a bcrypt in this case is just a lot of waste. Because it's usually happening just due to a bug. It's not, by design it shouldn't be that way. But it happened. I just don't have one of those in our world. Human.
Just curious, when you have those services operating independently, how big are usually the teams who take care of this?
5 is the limit.
Sorry?
5 is the limit.
5.
Yeah, is that, I mean, to make this team self-managed, you need a limited number of voices to meet. What we did was that when we started a new team, we used different strategies to set up a new team, but one of them was to grow the team to like 8 people, then to split it to spots of 4. By the time when we become 7, it starts being really painful. So it makes sense to keep them small.
So that's 5 developers.
So 5 developers, yeah. PO, some supporting roles don't count, just developers. How many pizzas did you order from truck?
I I didn't order any. It was ordered by guys over here, but I don't know. I don't know where is it. I hope it's over here. At least in this city.
I hope I'm hungry as well.
Yeah, we might have dinner somewhere else. It's gonna be probably faster. You have Chinese in Peking. So, for you who are here, next meetup is planned for 19th of March. Is again Tuesday. This time it's gonna be most likely again architecture cutout. So who of you experience it? It's something like you have a coding cutout, but this one is about the architecture. So in the team you will try to develop some kind of high-level architecture. It's not gonna be about presentation, it's gonna be about working in a group, most likely with some PO, and then presenting your solution and trying to do the best from your group, because there is gonna be probably most likely 3, 4, 5 groups who wins with their design. That's gonna be on 19th of March. Yeah. So
What do you win?
sorry?
What do you win in this case?
Yes, most likely blind is usually what we support. Okay, so thank you very much. Who wants to wait? Wait. And now it's like enjoy drinks. I would say food, but that's that.
Let's promote and the touch.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.